IR35 and how that relates to your contract and how it relates to the business entity test that you can Google and find on the HMRC website. The crux of IR35 is around three different things: the ability to provide a substitute, the ability to make sure that you're not having undue control exercised over how you do your work, and thirdly, that there shouldn't be undue mutuality of obligation between you and your client. So what does that all actually mean, and how does that relate to what you can find on the HMRC website? Substitution is quite self-evident, and we do find that a lot of our clients struggle to find a relevant, qualified, experienced substitute to take their place on the contract that they are undertaking. But it's worth remembering that with the proof of whether you're outside of IR35 is not dependent on satisfying all three of those three criteria. You've just got to make sure that you are exceeding one sufficiently to make you properly a business on your own. So in other words, if your expertise and experience is such that it's very difficult to provide a substitute, that in itself does not mean that you're going to be caught by IR35. However, the ability to provide a substitute and to actually make sure that a substitute does operate for you on occasion strengthens your position in terms of avoiding IR35, but it's not necessarily a showstopper if you can't do that. As far as control is concerned, this is where we find that most of our clients find it easier to demonstrate that they're outside of IR35 because it's control over how you do your work. So if you're genuinely a consultant and you report, say, weekly or monthly to a project manager, but on a day-to-day basis you are left alone, you have the expertise and experience to do whatever role you're undertaking, but you don't have someone at your shoulder telling you what to do, then that's a very good indicator that you are properly a consultant, a business in your own right, and therefore not caught by IR35. The third element, mutuality of obligation, which is an expression that very few people will recognise outside of this world, is really about to what extent your client is obliged to offer you work and to what extent you're obliged to take any work that they might offer you. Typically, although commercially it's not desirable, a good way of that being demonstrated is if the project that you're on comes to an end because the client's run out of funding or they've had a change of mind and they say, sorry, no more money, don't come in tomorrow, we don't need you anymore. Then commercially, personal point of view, you might not find that desirable, but from the point of view of demonstrating that you are outside of IR35 and truly in business on your own account, not disguised employee, then that actually would be very favourable to you. And there had been quite a recent IR35 court case where a contractor was working at British Aerospace and British Aerospace's computer systems went down. All the British Aerospace employees were found other things to do, whereas the contractors were just sent home. And that actually turned the case in favour of the contractor when HMRC were challenging their employment status. So that, in a bit more detail, is the three main factors of how IR35 compliance is determined. On the HMRC website, the business entity tests do tend to talk about a lot of other things, and we find that typically a contractor who answers the business entity tests honestly will be determined to be high risk in the view of HMRC and therefore potentially caught by IR35. You can take your own view on that, but obviously from HMRC's perspective, the more people that pay tax, the better off they are. So I think you have to look at it in the light of what the courts have determined, not what is necessarily on HMRC's website.